My name is Nathan Carter, and on the day I got married, not a single member of my family showed up. Not my parents, not my brother. As I stood at the altar surrounded by friends and chosen family, I thought that was the end of it, until the front doors swung open and they walked in. No warning, no apology, just silence. They stood at the back like strangers, unsure if they still belonged. And when my father asked, "Can we talk?" I looked him in the eye and said, "You're welcome to stay. But not at the front. That seat belongs to the people who showed up when it cost them something." It was a perfect spring afternoon in Portland, Oregon. The sky was impossibly blue, the kind that made you believe things could be beautiful again. I stood just outside the hall of the orchard house, watching the florist make last-minute adjustments to the arch, where I would soon stand with Jordan. My hands were steady. My heart was note. Inside, soft jazz was playing. The chairs were perfectly arranged. The white roses Jordan insisted on had arrived in full bloom. Everything was exactly as we'd planned, but the first thing I noticed was the absence. No one from my family was there. Not my father, not my mother, not my brother Daniel. Olivia, my best friend, was by my side, clipboard in hand, moving like a general before battle. She whispered something to the officiant, gave the DJ a nod, then turned to me and smiled. But I could see it in her eyes. She was worried. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone. I had looked at it more times than I wanted to admit, as if a text might magically appear. I unlocked the screen. Still nothing new. Just the last message from my mother from 2 days ago. "We won't be attending, Nathan. We hope you find happiness." I remembered staring at that message the first time sitting on the edge of my bed, the tuxedo bag hanging untouched by the closet. Olivia had been the one to find me. She didn't say anything, just sat next to me and put a hand on my back. Now 2 days later, I was about to get married, and still their words rang in my head. "We won't be attending." A man walked by with a tray of champagne flutes, and I stepped aside. Olivia nudged me gently. "You ready?" she asked. I didn't respond right away. My throat was dry. I nodded, more for her sake than mine. The music shifted. The volume turned slightly up. I recognized the cue. We were minutes away. "You look good, Nathan," Olivia said, squeezing my arm. "Really good. Thanks," I murmured. "You too. I don't know what I'd do without you." She smiled again, this time wider. "You'd probably forget your own name mid-vows." We both laughed, and for a second the weight on my chest lifted. I glanced at the mirror near the entrance. My reflection stared back at me. Crisp black suit, neatly combed hair. The man in the mirror looked ready, but inside I was still that boy standing in the hallway of our old house in Eugene, Oregon, trying to make my father proud. That memory came fast. I was 12. I had just won a local writing contest. I ran home to tell Dad. He barely looked up from his paper. "Is it sports-related?" he had asked. "No," I said. "It's a story about a kid who loses his brother." He hummed without interest and went back to reading. I never brought up writing to him again. A staff member opened the double doors slightly. Guests were arriving. A few familiar faces, old college friends, Jordan's business partners, strangers who had somehow become supporters, but not a single Carter. Jordan was in another room waiting. We had decided not to see each other until the ceremony. I had imagined this moment so many times. What it would feel like. Who would be there. How my father would pat my shoulder. How Mom would tear up at the sight of me. Reality looked nothing like the vision. Olivia leaned in. "Time to take your place." Deep breath. I nodded again. walked slowly toward the curtain that separated the waiting area from the aisle. My fingers brushed the edge of it. I closed my eyes. This was it. I straightened my spine, inhaled, and stepped forward. When I was a kid, I used to believe my father could do no wrong. Matthew Carter was the sheriff of Lane County for nearly 2 decades. A stern man with thick eyebrows and a voice that could silence a room. He walked into every situation like he had already won. People respected him. They feared him too, and I tried for years to earn that same respect. But I was never like him. Not really. Back then, I spent more time writing in my notebooks than outside playing catch. My mom, Carolyn, used to say I was too sensitive for my own good. I thought she meant it as a compliment. Turns out she didn't. In high school, I kept my head down, got good grades, went to church every Sunday with my family. I didn't make waves. That was what they liked. I was the quiet son, the safe one. Then I met Jason Miller during my last year of college in San Francisco. He was already running his first startup, and he had the kind of charm that made people lean in when he talked. I was drawn in fast, too fast. Jason was magnetic. He showed up at my poetry reading and told me I had the kind of voice that people listened to. No one had ever said that to me before. Within 6 months, we were dating. By the next year, I moved in with him. My parents found out the way people do when they think they're owed the truth. Daniel had told them. He had seen a picture online of me and Jason at some tech fundraiser. Dad didn't speak to me for weeks after that. When he finally did, it was in the form of a letter. 2 pages front and back, quoting scripture and talking about legacy. Mom called once. Her voice was shaking. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just said, "You've embarrassed us, Nathan." I tried to explain. Jason was good to me. He believed in me. I wasn't throwing away my future. I was building something new. But all they saw was a headline they didn't want in their neighborhood. We argued for months. Every call ended in silence. By the time Jason proposed to me, I didn't even tell them. I knew what the answer would be. I thought I was choosing love, but I didn't see who Jason really was. Not then. He was controlling in ways that felt like love at first. He wanted to know where I was, who I was, with how long I'd be gone. He said it was because he cared, and I believed him. He started asking me to work with him, said we'd be stronger as a team. It felt good at first, important, like we were building something big. But slowly I became less of myself. My writing dried up. My friends faded. Everything was Jason. I should have seen it sooner. One night I came home late from a poetry event Olivia had dragged me to. Jason was waiting. Calm. Too calm. He asked where I'd been. I told him. He didn't believe me. That was the night he accused me of cheating. The first time he raised his voice. The first time he grabbed my wrist just a little too tight. I left 2 weeks later, packed a bag and stayed with Olivia. Jason sent flowers the next day, then emails, then threats. And when I finally said I was done, he made sure I lost everything. He leaked private messages, twisted them out of context, claimed I had been emotionally manipulative, accused me of using his connections to climb the ladder. Within a month, I was asked to leave the marketing firm I had fought hard to get into. My name became a whisper in industry events. My inbox dried up. Mom said, "You've made your bed, now lie in it." Dad said nothing. Daniel sent me one line, "I warned you." I stopped returning calls after that. There was no one left to explain myself to. I wish I could say it ended there, but it didn't. The worst was still coming. Jason wasn't satisfied with just ruining my reputation. He needed to keep control, so he started showing up at the same events I did. He would smile in public like nothing had happened then, whisper veiled threats when no one else could hear. "You'll never be anything without me." he once said under his breath as we passed each other at a networking gala in downtown Seattle. I kept walking, but the seed had been planted. I started questioning everything, my resume, my portfolio, my worth. One of the top agencies in the city had been considering me for a creative director position. Jason found out. A week later, the offer was off the table. He had friends, influence. Whispers traveled fast in this industry, and even faster when spoken by someone like him. Then came the headline. A tabloid blog published a story claiming I had a history of workplace misconduct, that I used personal relationships to gain promotions. The article was vague, littered with half-truths, and clearly planted. But it spread. I knew Jason had pulled the strings, but I couldn't prove it. The agency where I freelanced quietly stopped calling. A mentor I'd looked up to unfollowed me online. People started avoiding eye contact at events, and my inbox empty. I tried confronting him once. I showed up at his office without an appointment. The receptionist looked startled but let me wait. He came out 20 minutes later surrounded by his new entourage. He saw me and laughed. Not a chuckle, a real laugh. "Nathan, you're still trying," he said loudly enough for others to hear. "That's cute." I walked out without saying a word. After that, I stopped going to events. I stayed inside. I updated my resume weekly but never hit send. I lived off my savings. Olivia checked in daily. Sometimes she brought food. Other times she just sat with me in silence. My parents' radio silence. Daniel changed his number, or blocked mine. I couldn't tell anymore. And then one night I saw Jason's name trending. A business magazine had named him one of the top tech CEOs of the year. In the photo, he was smiling wide, confident, untouchable. I stared at that screen for a long time. My apartment was dark except for the glow of the laptop. I felt something crack open inside me. Not anger, not sadness, something deeper, a resolve. He had taken everything from me, my career, my reputation, my family, but he hadn't taken my voice. And I was going to use it. I started small. With nothing left to lose, I emptied what little savings I had into a beat-up laptop and a second-hand desk I found on Craigslist. I set them up in the corner of Olivia's spare bedroom. That became my office, my new life headquarters. It was 2020, the early days of lockdowns and uncertainty. The world was turning inward, and so was I. I'd read somewhere that great things can come out of darkness. I held on to that idea like a lifeline. I named the company Clearframe. Just me, some writing samples, and a cheap logo I designed myself. I offered branding services to small businesses on Instagram. Most of my emails went unanswered, but one florist in Vancouver, Washington gave me a shot, then a bakery, then a podcast startup. Slowly a trickle turned into a stream. Each new client felt like a miracle. Each invoice paid was validation that I still had worth. But I was still looking over my shoulder, wondering when the past would catch up. And then the letter arrived. It was from Horizon Media, the agency I had once dreamed of working for. A cease and desist. They claimed I had violated a non-compete clause buried in a contract I barely remembered signing. Attached was a formal notice of legal action. A week later, Jason filed a personal lawsuit against me. Defamation, he claimed. Public character attacks. He cited a blog post I had written about toxic leadership in tech, never mentioned his name. But everyone knew who it was about. I panicked. I couldn't afford a lawyer, could barely afford rent. I felt the walls closing in again. Olivia didn't say I told you so. She just brought over dinner and a yellow folder with a business card clipped to the front. Her name's Sophia Grant. She's a civil rights attorney. Worked with some of the biggest whistleblower cases in the state. She's expensive, but she's smart, and she owes me a favor. I called the next morning. Sophia met me at a coffee shop in downtown Portland. She had a sharp bob haircut, eyes that didn't miss anything, and a no-nonsense tone that made me sit straighter. "You're not the first person they've tried to crush," she said after skimming through the paperwork. "But you might be the first to fight back." I asked if I had a chance. She leaned forward. "If we're smart, and if you're honest with me, every detail, every message, every time he tried to silence you." I gave her everything, my journals, the emails, the recordings I had saved out of fear. She read them like a detective assembling a case. Over the next few weeks, Sophia became my lifeline. She sent formal responses, filed counterclaims, and kept Horizon and Jason's lawyers at bay. Her confidence was contagious. I stopped flinching every time my phone buzzed. She called me late one night. Her voice was steady. "They're going to settle Nathan. Jason doesn't want discovery, and Horizon doesn't want press. What does that mean for me?" "It means we win quietly, but you walk away clean." I sat on my porch in the dark, phone pressed to my ear, not saying anything. Olivia came outside, handed me a mug of tea, then sat beside me. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Sophia didn't just help me survive. She reminded me I wasn't powerless. Clearframe started picking up more clients. My name began circulating again, but this time in a good way. People saw me as resilient, someone who had weathered storms and still showed up. I wasn't healed, not fully, but I was healing. I was building something new from the ashes of everything Jason and my family had tried to burn down. And I wasn't doing it alone anymore. One afternoon, a few days after the settlement, Sophia called unexpectedly. "Do you want to grab lunch? I know a faux place that doesn't skimp on cilantro." We sat across from each other, steam rising between us. She wasn't just my attorney anymore. There was a rhythm to our conversation that wasn't professional. She laughed at my sarcasm. I teased her about alphabetizing her files. "You're good at this," she said over chopsticks. "What, eating noodles?" She smiled. "That too, but mostly coming back." It struck me then how far I'd come in such a short time, how her belief had acted like scaffolding while I rebuilt. Late nights became normal again, but this time filled with purpose. I spent hours refining client work, drafting pitches, and organizing workflows. I was no longer waiting to be rescued. I was rising. And when the emails from new clients came in, I didn't hesitate. I responded with confidence, set my rates, and protected my time. I wasn't desperate anymore. Evenings were quieter. Olivia had gone back to teaching in person. The house felt more like mine now. I started cooking again, little things like roasted vegetables and pasta that didn't come from a box. I let music play in the background while I worked. Sometimes jazz, sometimes folk. The silence didn't scare me anymore. Sophia and I started a tradition every Thursday lunch. We rarely talked about the case. We talked about everything else. She told me about her dad, a union organizer who taught her never to fold. I told her about my mom, who once believed I could be president. Before everything fell apart, she listened without judgment. It was a rare gift. One night, I opened a forgotten box Olivia had tucked into her closet when I moved in. Inside were pictures, old notebooks, a copy of my college thesis. Proof of who I was before all of it. I laid them out on the floor like puzzle pieces, looking for the version of myself I had lost. I didn't find him completely, but I saw echoes, and that was enough. By winter, Clearframe was on solid footing. I had consistent clients, a routine, and a reason to wake up every morning. I no longer measured time by pain. The scars were still there, but they were healing clean, and Sophia's friendship, quiet and steady, became the thread stitching my life back together. We never celebrated the win, not officially. But when the judge signed off on the final settlement agreement, Sophia brought over a bottle of sparkling cider and 2 plastic cups. We sat on my porch again like the night she called to say Horizon was backing off. To the end of silence, she said, clinking her cup against mine. And to the beginning of something better, I replied. By the end of that week, several legal blogs picked up the case. Not by name, not directly, but the story of a whistleblower in creative tech who stood up against wrongful termination and won it spread fast. LinkedIn posts mentioned me obliquely. A few even praised my courage. Clearframe got an influx of inquiries, mostly small businesses at first, but a few from bigger names too. A mid-sized apparel brand in Eugene, a nonprofit in Sacramento. I worked day and night, pulled in a couple of freelancers Olivia recommended, and for the first time I wasn't just surviving, I was building. Sophia remained close. We kept up our Thursday lunches, though now they felt less like rituals and more like anchors. We talked about everything: her frustration with a pending immigration case, my anxiety about hiring. There was comfort in the routine and in the rare space where I didn't have to explain myself. The more people heard about me, the more my past tried to resurface. An article about Jason's company popped up on Twitter and someone tagged me. I ignored it. Another ex-colleague reached out to say they had quietly left Horizon after my case, inspired by how I stood my ground. Those messages reminded me why I spoke up in the first place. It had never been just about revenge. It was about reclaiming a piece of myself that had been buried under shame. One morning in April, Sophia forwarded an email from a journalist at The Oregonian. They wanted to do a profile, focused on entrepreneurs who rebuilt after corporate fallout. She left it up to me. I said yes. The interview was awkward at first. I stumbled over words, unsure how much to share. But the journalist was patient, and slowly my story came out, not the victim narrative, but the rebuilding, the grit, the refusal to stay down. When the article ran, I wasn't ready for the attention. Comments poured in. Clients doubled. My inbox became unmanageable in the best way. But more than that, people reached out just to say thank you, for being honest, for making them feel less alone. That kind of validation hits different. It doesn't fill the hole your family leaves behind, but it patches the edges. Sophia smiled when I told her. Told you, she said, you're bigger than what they tried to do to you. Clearframe grew. I hired Olivia part-time as a project manager, set up an LLC, got my first business credit card. I started pitching to investors. A few responded. Some didn't, but I kept pushing. By the time fall rolled around, I had an office space, small, shared, but mine. I painted one wall navy blue and put up a framed photo of a lighthouse. Sophia said it felt poetic. At night, I still battled doubt, wondered if all this was temporary, if it would all be taken away again. But then I'd remember those early days, sleepless, scared, alone, and realize how far I'd come. Nathan Carter, the guy who got smeared online and sued by his ex, was becoming something else, a symbol maybe, of persistence, of quiet power, of turning wreckage into foundation. One Friday, as I locked up the office, Olivia sent me a text. Your profile's on BuzzFeed. Apparently you're the branding phoenix. I laughed out loud, took a screenshot, sent it to Sophia. She texted back. Told you. Watch out, world. For the first time in years, I believed her. Spring turned to summer. The days stretched longer, and with them came a sense of stability I hadn't felt in years. I was getting used to being okay, which oddly was its own kind of adjustment. Then the email landed in my inbox. Subject line, long time. The sender, Jason Miller. I stared at it for a full minute. My stomach sank like it knew before I did that peace was about to expire. The message was short, polite. He'd seen the article. Thought it was brave of me to speak up. Said he was proud of how far I'd come. That he hoped we could catch up soon, maybe coffee. I didn't respond, closed the laptop and went for a walk even though the Portland sky threatened rain. The wind was sharp, almost cleansing. Jason had never reached out before. Not when the lawsuit settled, not when the media circled. Now 2 years later, he wanted to reconnect. Sophia's warning echoed in my head. When they come back, it's not for you. It's for what you've built. 3 days passed. Then came a direct message on Instagram, a heart emoji on a post about Clear Frame's 2-year anniversary, then a comment under my BuzzFeed profile link. So proud of you. Public. Calculated. Olivia called that night. You okay? I told her. She sighed. Block him, Nate. Don't give him a door to walk through. I didn't block him. Not right away. Part of me wanted to believe it. That people change. That closure is possible. Then the video surfaced. It was a clipped recording from 4 years ago. I recognized my own voice, tense mid-argument with Jason. But the audio had been spliced, words taken out of context rearranged. In the version now circulating on Twitter, I sounded aggressive, unhinged. The caption read, "This the guy y'all are praising." It exploded overnight. People I hadn't heard from in months texted to ask what happened. Clients emailed to check in. One even put our project on hold just to reassess. I sat in my office watching it all spiral. My hands didn't stop shaking. Sophia was already dialing when I picked up. She didn't ask if I was okay. He's testing you, she said. He wants you to panic, to react. I didn't reply. We'll respond legally, she added. But in the meantime, silence is strength. I didn't post, didn't explain. I logged off. But the damage was already done. My name trended, not for my work, not for my recovery, but because Jason wanted to drag me back into the mud. Olivia brought over Thai food that night. We ate on the floor like we had in the worst days. He doesn't get to do this again, she said. But he had, and I wasn't sure this time if I could crawl out of it. I looked at the lighthouse photo on my office wall, its frame slightly crooked. I remembered why I'd hung it, to remind me that even in storm there's a fixed light. I wasn't going to let Jason be the storm this time. The next morning, Sophia called me before I'd even had coffee. Her voice was clipped serious. Nate, she said, we need to talk. Something in her tone dropped my stomach. I shut the door to my office and sat down. We traced the IP origin of the video's upload. It didn't come from Jason. It came from within Portland, from someone who had access to your old files. Files only a handful of people would have had. My pulse kicked up. Who? There was a pause. Daniel. The name didn't register at first. Then it hit me like cold water. My brother. I hadn't spoken to Daniel in over 2 years. Last I heard, he was still running operations at Carter Innovations, the family's logistics firm. Clean suits, clean cuts, clean loyalties. He always backed our parents, always kept distance from my mess. Sophia continued. He's been in communication with Jason, emails, calls. I got the records through a source. One of the files used in the edit, Daniel sent it. My chest tightened. I tried to speak, but my mouth felt dry. I don't know why, Sophia added. But you need to be prepared. This isn't just Jason, it's personal. I hung up and stared at the wall for a long time. Anger curled in my gut. Not the hot flare of fury, but the cold kind. The betrayal that doesn't shout, just burns. Later that day, I drove to the Carter Innovations office. It had been years, but the building hadn't changed. Still sterile glass, still intimidatingly tall. I signed in under a fake name, asked to speak to Daniel. He came down 10 minutes later, brow furrowed when he saw me. "Nathan," he said like I was a stranger. "I need 5 minutes," I told him. Alone. We ended up in the parking garage away from cameras. I didn't waste time. "Why?" He looked away. "You wouldn't understand. Try me." He shoved his hands in his pockets. "Jason came to me, said he wanted to make things right, said he had a way to help clean your name, that he regretted everything. You believed him." He flinched. I thought he changed, and I thought if I helped, maybe we could rebuild something. You, me, the family. "So you leaked a private file, let him edit it to ruin me." Daniel's jaw tightened. "It wasn't supposed to go that far. He said it'd show your side too, that it'd be fair." "Fair." My voice cracked. "You've always picked him over me, even when he was sleeping with his assistant behind my back, even when he tried to sue me into silence." He didn't respond. "You didn't lose everything, Daniel. I did. And now that I'm standing again, you want to knock me back down." Silence. "You should go," he finally said. I did. Walked out into the sun, furious and hollow. 2 days later, an internal memo from Carter Innovations leaked. Board members had confronted Daniel about the scandal. Investors were nervous, partnerships in jeopardy, the company's name trending for the wrong reasons. I didn't rejoice. There was no pleasure in watching my family fall apart. But I didn't feel sorry either. Some storms you don't survive, others you become. Planning the wedding felt like trying to rebuild a house after a hurricane. Every decision carried more weight than it should have. But it wasn't about the ceremony. It was about what it represented. A declaration, a reclamation, a promise to myself that no matter how much they tried to drag me under, I was still here, still standing. Jordan was calm through it all. He wasn't flashy, wasn't dramatic. He handled vendors with a smooth charm. Made decisions when I froze and listened when I spiraled. His strength wasn't loud, but it anchored me in ways I didn't realize I needed. We picked a secluded vineyard outside Bend for the venue. It was elegant without being ostentatious. Just family and close friends, or at least the people who had chosen to be our family. Olivia took over logistics like she was commanding a small army. Sophia handled the legal side, vetting every vendor contract like we were signing a government treaty. There were no save the dates to send to my parents. No expectation of a white flag RSVP from Daniel, just the people who mattered. The week leading up to the wedding was a blur. Olivia had turned our Airbnb into a planning headquarters. Charts on the wall, call sheets, a schedule tighter than a military op. Sophia flew in 2 days early. She brought me coffee, a stern look, and a hug that cracked something open inside me. "You look good," she said, studying me like a case file. "I feel like I earned this," I told her. "You did." The morning of the wedding, I woke before dawn. I stood outside with a cup of coffee, watching fog curl around the vineyard. Jordan joined me in silence. He reached for my hand. It wasn't nervousness I felt, it was clarity. We dressed separately. Olivia fussed over every detail on my suit, muttering curses about last-minute lint. Sophia helped Jordan tie his bow tie, then patted his chest twice, like sealing a promise. Guests trickled in slowly. Colleagues, friends, people who had stood by us when things fell apart. Faces that reminded me of survival, of second chances. When the music started, I stood at the altar with my heart steady. Sophia walked Jordan down the aisle. Olivia stood beside me. Every step he took felt like a heartbeat sinking into mine. There was a brief moment when I looked out at the crowd. No empty seats reserved in hope. No shadows of the past lingering in the back row. Just light. Just now. We exchanged vows we had written ourselves. Jordan's voice cracked halfway through his. Mine shook at the end, but we meant every word. Every breath between the lines was years in the making. Sophia pronounced us married legally and loudly. Olivia whooped before anyone else could clap. Jordan kissed me, and the world sharpened. The reception was full of laughter and gentle chaos. No drama, no scandals, just joy. Olivia gave a toast that made people tear up and then laugh through it. Sophia told a story about the first time she met me and how she thought I'd end up in jail. At some point, I stood alone on the balcony watching the stars blink over the vineyard. Jordan found me wrapped an arm around my waist. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah, I never thought I'd make it here." He kissed my temple. "You made it, and not just here. You remade it all." And he was right. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about legacy, about love, about showing up for the life I wanted even if no one from the past believed I deserved it. I looked back toward the crowd of dancing, laughing people who chose me. And I chose them. As I made my way back into the hall, I noticed Sophia slipping away from the crowd. Her eyes caught mine and she tilted her head. I followed. She stood near the entrance of the vineyard's main hall, checking something on her phone. Without looking up, she spoke softly. "There's a media van at the gate." "What?" She finally looked up, eyes calm. "Word got out. Someone must have posted. You're trending." I felt my chest tighten, but not with fear. Not this time. Just a strange anticipation. Sophia reached for my hand and pulled me closer. "It's not bad. It's beautiful. You and Jordan, the ceremony, the story, it's resonating. They're calling you the comeback groom." I laughed, tension spilling out of me. "That's ridiculous." "It's accurate," she said, and then squeezed my hand. "Come with me." We walked back into the hall. The DJ had just changed tracks. The guests were either dancing or clinking glasses. I caught Olivia waving at us, mouthing something about the cake. Sophia led me to the dance floor and whispered to the DJ. Then she turned to me and extended her hand. "May I have this dance?" I raised an eyebrow. "You trying to upstage my husband?" she grinned. "Just giving the people what they came to see." We danced. It was awkward and slow and not at all like the waltz we attempted during rehearsal. But people gathered around, clapping, cheering. Someone shouted her name, cameras flashed, phones rose, and then the front doors opened. I saw them before I fully understood. My father, Matthew, my mother, Carolyn. Daniel stood slightly behind them. My breath caught. They didn't walk in immediately. They hesitated at the threshold, scanning the room like tourists at a monument they never thought they'd visit. Sophia's hand on my shoulder steadied me. She didn't turn. She just said, "Let them come to you." Olivia was the first to notice. Her expression went from shock to concern to fury in seconds. Jordan stood beside her, mouth set in a hard line. But the crowd didn't notice. They were still clapping, still celebrating. My parents finally stepped inside. Daniel followed. Sophia stepped back. Jordan crossed the room to join me. We stood together side by side. My father looked older than I remembered. My mother's eyes shimmered. Daniel's face was unreadable. No one spoke. Then my mother took a step forward. "Congratulations," she said, voice trembling. I didn't answer. She looked at Jordan, then back at me. "You look happy." "I am." There was another pause, then my father stepped forward. "We shouldn't have stayed away. You did, though." His jaw tensed. I waited. "We thought we were protecting you." Turns out we were just protecting ourselves. I looked at each of them. At Daniel, whose eyes dropped when mine met his. "This isn't the time," Jordan whispered, but I raised a hand. "I appreciate that you came. Really. But this isn't about you anymore. This day, this life, it's mine. It's ours. My father nodded slowly. We'll leave. I shook my head. No, you're welcome to stay. But you're just guests now. Daniel looked like he wanted to say something, but Olivia stepped beside me, arms folded, eyes daring him to speak. They found seats in the back, quiet, out of the way. The music resumed. Jordan and I rejoined the celebration. More dancing, more laughter. The energy returned, but something had shifted, not a confrontation, not forgiveness, just truth. And for the first time it was mine to hold. They lingered near the entrance, unsure. Jordan's hand found mine, grounding me. I stepped forward, not to meet them, but to stand beside Sophia. She nodded once, just enough. My mother was the first to move. Her heels clicked softly across the floor. She stopped a few feet away, eyes glossy. Her voice was tentative. We saw the news. You looked beautiful. Thank you, I said. My father joined her, nodding once in a stiff, practiced way. Daniel hung back. Can we talk? He asked, voice quieter than I'd ever heard. I glanced around. Guests were mingling, laughing. No one was watching us. It wasn't a scene. Not yet. We can, I said, but not today. My mother opened her mouth, closed. It tried again. We were wrong, Nathan. About everything. I know. I waited. Let them sit with it. Let them feel the silence I had lived with for years. You have every right to hate us, my father said. I don't, I replied. But I'm not here to fix what you broke. Daniel finally stepped forward. I didn't know Jason would do that, he said. I never wanted to hurt you. You did anyway. He flinched. I kept my voice calm even. This isn't a trial. I'm not here to punish you. But don't expect to be part of this chapter just because you regret the last. We stood in that quiet for a moment longer. Then I gestured to the back rows of the venue. There's space if you want to sit, but you're not in the front anymore. That seat is taken by the people who stood by me when it cost them something. Sophia, Olivia, Jordan. My mother nodded. My father looked like he wanted to say more, but thought better of it. Daniel's shoulders slumped. They walked to the back quietly. No scene, no drama. Just three people slowly realizing the cost of their absence. Jordan returned to my side. You okay? I took a breath, felt the air settle in my chest. Yeah, just tying up old threads. We returned to the crowd, to the laughter, to the life we had built, and I didn't look back. The day moved like honey sweet and slow, stretched out in golden light. People danced and laughed, and somewhere in the middle of it all, I saw Jason's name trending on Twitter. Not for something new, but for who he had been, for what he had done. Clips and commentary flooded the feed. Outlets that once ignored the whispers were now shouting the truth. The full footage had surfaced unedited. Sophia had made sure of that. There were no statements from Jason, just silence. The kind that follows the end of a performance. And I didn't feel triumphant. I felt released. Daniel announced his resignation from the family company that same week. His departure came without a press release, just a quiet memo and a line at the end of a newsletter. Internal sources cited personal reasons. I didn't comment. My parents kept their distance. They sent a card after the wedding, no return address. Inside one sentence, we're proud of the man you've become. It wasn't signed. I didn't need it to be. Jordan and I flew to Kauai for our honeymoon. We stayed in a quiet beach house, unplugged from the noise. He surfed. I wrote. We cooked together. We didn't talk about the past unless it surfaced naturally. One morning I woke to find him watching the sunrise from the deck. I wrapped my arms around him from behind. What are you thinking about? I asked. How far you've come, he said. How lucky I am to be part of it. I pressed my face to his shoulder. I used to think my story needed a perfect ending. And now I think a worthy one is enough. He turned and kissed me, and in that soft light I felt it. Not closure exactly, but peace, a version of it that came not from forgetting but from surviving. When we returned home, I walked back into a life I had built, not inherited, not begged for, built. It had scars, yes, but it also had strength, community, joy. And for the first time, I didn't measure my worth by the people who had left, but by the ones who had stayed. The morning after we got back from Kauai, I brewed coffee in the kitchen. We had picked tile by tile, cabinet by cabinet. The house smelled like cedar and cinnamon, and sunlight poured through the skylight. Jordan was still asleep. For a few minutes it was just me, barefoot and quiet, staring out the window at the life we had curated. I sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop. The cursor blinked on a blank document. For the first time in years, I didn't dread the idea of telling my story. I wrote about the years I lost the people I trusted who betrayed me, and the ones who showed up when everything crumbled. I wrote about shame, about silence, about rebuilding, not because I had something to prove, but because I had something worth protecting myself. The article went live 2 weeks later. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclamation, about dignity, about the messy, non-linear path to self-respect. It went viral within a day, not because it was perfectly written, but because people saw themselves in it, in the loneliness, in the resilience, in the hope. One comment stayed with me. I didn't think anyone else had walked that road. Thank you for showing me there's an end to it. I met readers at speaking events. I answered emails from strangers who felt like family. I hugged people who cried in my arms because their pain finally had a mirror. I built a nonprofit with Sophia and Olivia dedicated to advocacy and rebuilding lives after emotional abuse and betrayal. We called it Lighthouse. Jordan donated his time. Sophia handled legal protections. Olivia ran operations, and me, I told stories. One afternoon, standing on a makeshift stage at a community center in Portland, I looked out at the crowd of faces, young, old, broken, healing, and I said, "You are not the worst thing someone did to you. You are what you choose to become after." The applause wasn't thunderous. It was soft, respectful, and it meant everything. That night back home, I stood on the balcony with Jordan. The city lights blinked below us. He wrapped his arms around me, warm and steady. "You ever think about how different it could have gone?" he asked. "All the time," I said, but not with regret, just gratitude. I closed my eyes and exhaled slowly. I had made it out, not unscarred, but alive, and I had turned that survival into something that could reach back and pull someone else forward. This wasn't the life my parents dreamed for me, but it was mine, entirely, and I was proud of the man I had become. So I ask you, wherever you are, what's your story? Have you ever walked into a wedding feeling alone, only to walk out feeling free?